Thanks, Michael. Tony from Melbourne has asked, does the graphics card performance improve Media Composer performance? Should we get the fastest graphics card we can?
You do want to make sure. I'm sorry?
David's just answered it. He says, graphics card, yes. GPU processing unloads the CPU, increases performance.
Yes. And you do want to get a graphics card that is supported. So make sure you check out what is supported on the Avid website.
Right. And Gordon has asked, is it possible to have more than one line of buttons in the timeline?
Good question. That actually was something that I think right now, this was a question that I had because this space right here is not active. I think they're looking at expanding that. But I think they're also looking at, I don't know if you remember seeing the fast menu that was in the center between the two rows of buttons here. That actually was a window of just buttons, which might become a tool that you could dock somewhere and use. I might be talking out of turn because I think it's something that they're looking at maybe developing, but there are different things that they're doing. So short answer, no, you can't have a second row of buttons here in your timeline, but we are looking at other options. By default, only one row of buttons come up under your Composer window, but if you go to your Composer settings, turn on 2 rows, and then you have more that you can map right there. I mean, that pretty much is the overview of the new version. I love to show you a couple tips and tricks, unless there are other questions. So while we're looking, there's one feature that has been inside of Media Composer for, I guess, a year or so that people don't know about. And this is kind of huge because if you color code your clips, if you're making a selection of clips in your timeline, or maybe you want to create a sequence of just a certain number of the clips that are here, if I go in and I'm in segment mode and I choose the color orange right here, and then I right click, there's an option that was built in that says select everything with the same source clip color. So if I say everything with the same source clip color, you'll see anything to the left of that, to the right, same source clip color, no source clip color, offline clips, same local clip color, or reverse everything I've selected. I'm going to choose everything with the same source clip color. So now everything is gray, that's orange, that was orange. I right click again and say create sequence based on that selection. So if I go and I drop this into my sequences bin, it creates a new sequence that when I open it up, it's just my orange clips. So the great thing about this is if you have turnovers you need to send over, audio elements, VFX or anything, you don't have to go in and duplicate the sequence and then delete what you don't want. Select what you do want and create a sequence of just those clips. That's something that people are like, how long have you been able to do that? For quite a while, for I'd say at least over a year, if not more. Also, if you choose any of the options to select left or select right, you may notice that the buttons here for selection also select filler. But if you hold down the Option key or the Alt key, when you do that same selection, it does not choose filler. So that's another tip and trick. Live from Burbank, California.
Michael Baber from Macquarie University has asked, can you comment on the new media engine, please?
Oh, good question. The new media engine, we have made some improvements there. Basically, what we've added is the ability to do distributed processing. So things like taking idle computers that are in your facility, you can assign them through your Nexus share, through your shared storage, connect to your idle computers, and when you go to do a render, you would have an option, it's grayed out because I'm not connected to anything, that says distributed processing. So it's a little processing or render farm that can be created in your facility really easily. So being able to do that is something that we've done within the engine. We've also sped up the processing of DPX files. So if you are working, let's say you are sending off some media for VFX, you can export at 32-bit float or anything high res. But if you choose to export DPX, we've actually sped up the process 10 times what it was. So you'll see a substantial change when you are exporting to DPX from Media Composer. And for those of you that didn't know, we do link to DPX files as well through the source browser. So if you have a folder of 1,000 DPX files, you click on the folder, you say link, and it'll actually string them all together and link to become the single clip of all the DPX files.
There was also another question that David answered just about whether it would include distributive processing for exports, and David answered that saying that it will include export in the future. But in the meantime, another question is it possible to create a new bin within a folder, for example, within your dailies folder, without having to manually drag it in?
So I'm going to right click on dailies, I'm going to say new bin, and it actually populated a new bin in that folder. Is that what you're looking for? I hope so.
Yeah, we got an excellent, so I believe so. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. So yeah, right click on your folder and it will actually create the bin inside that folder. Good question. Okay, we have a little more time. I'm gonna add in a couple more tips and tricks. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. There's one more question here that I almost overlooked, which is, does distributed processing require a different license, or is this included in the MC Ultimate Perpetual license?
Good question. That is going to be an extra to your system.
Thanks, Michael. And is it possible to embed an image into a scrolling title?
I haven't tried that, so I don't know.
Curly one, Gordon. All right, so I guess I'll keep monitoring the questions, but if you want to move on to your next tip and trick, please.
That's great. No, this is fantastic. A tip and trick that I like to show also is, I mean, one thing you may notice by default now, the time code track is separating your video and your audio. There are a lot of people that said, oh, I usually did that normally, so now they don't have to. It's just a nice way to separate your tracks. You can go and change that, but by default, when you're creating timelines, the time code is going to be splitting the video and the audio. But when it comes to tracks, everyone knows that typically you can select a track and use the up and down arrow keys now to move clips and elements in your timeline. And if you do drag up, it does start adding new tracks. But that's always adding tracks to the existing timeline, and it always adds it to the top. What people didn't know, or what people hadn't been told, is you can actually insert tracks into your timeline. So if you naturally do a Command Y or Control Y to add a track, just add an option to that. So if I'm going to do Command Option Y, you get an add track selection. And I'm going to say, let's add a new, oh, by the way, did you know that we now have 64 tracks of video in Media Composer? That was sort of snuck into the New Year's Eve version of Media Composer. So 64 tracks of video, but I'm going to add a new V1. So when I say, okay, I want to add a new V1, well, that already exists. So if I say I want to insert, watch the timeline as a new V1 gets inserted and everything gets pushed up automatically. So I now have a clean track that I can add some more clips to, which again is great because people normally will select all of the edits and then use the up and down arrow key or try to move them up with their mouse or their Wacom tablet. Now you don't have to, or actually this has been in there for a while, you don't have to at all. Insert, it'll have insert for video or for audio. So again, if you hold Command Option Y or Command Option U down, you can choose what track, what type of track you want to insert into your timeline.